la discapacidad y los permisos de estacionamientos a nivel nacional a través de nuevos sistemas digitales. Se cuenta con el primer Plan Nacional de Accesibilidad Universal de Panamá, 2022-2032, bajo la cooperación del Banco Mundial. Con el BID se realizó la segunda encuesta nacional de discapacidad en DIS-2, que se encuentra en etapa de tabulación de datos. Se han desarrollado proyectos para ampliar las pruebas de tamizaje neonatales y los ajustes razonables en centros educativos a nivel nacional. Con la cooperación europea se trabajó para fortalecer y mejorar la empleabilidad de las personas con discapacidad bajo el enfoque de género. Con el programa conjunto de la ONU se trabajó para fortalecer a las organizaciones de personas con discapacidad y la certificación de discapacidad. En gestión de riesgo se trabaja arduamente para garantizar la seguridad y protección de las personas con discapacidad durante emergencias. Aún quedan muchos puentes por construir. Por tanto, es vital concretar alianzas con otros sectores para establecer y alcanzar nuevas metas y trabajar en equipo para lograrlas. Muchísimas gracias.
I thank the distinguished delegate of Panama. Next, may I invite Honorable Dallas Alahaperuma, Member of Parliament of Sri Lanka and Chair of the Sri Lankan Parliamentary Caucus for the Inclusion of Persons with Disabilities. You have the floor, sir.
Excellencies, at a juncture when our actions in the past and their consequences to the present are a point of discussion and debate, and as we look for ways to resolve the multifold challenges of an uncertain future, Sri Lanka is the view that this year's theme, Rethinking Disability Inclusion in the Current International Juncture and ahead of the Summit of the Future, is of utmost relevance. We are here today with a dedicated commitment to implement the full integration of our disabled community as valued and active participants in the life of our nation. Sri Lanka is also pleased to play its role as a vice chair of the session and is also honored to be co-chairing the first roundtable on this session. We take this opportunity to reaffirm its unwavering commitment to the principles of equality, inclusion, and empowerment for persons with disabilities. In recent years, our government has taken proactive steps to implement inclusive policies and programs aimed at promoting accessibility, education, employment, and social inclusion for persons with disabilities across the country. This would not be possible without the advocacy undertaken by stakeholders such as the Disability Organizations Joint Front and Organizations for Persons with Disabilities. In recognition in inclusivity as a cross-cutting issue, the Sri Lankan Parliament last November formed the Parliamentary Caucus for the Inclusion of Persons with Disabilities. I am pleased to deliver this statement in my capacity as the chairman of the Parliamentary Caucus. Sri Lanka was pleased to be invited to implement the UN Partnerships on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities Fund Inception Phase in 2023. As a key activity of the inception phase, an induction training of around 30 stakeholders was conducted in May this year. The induction was designed to provide stakeholders with a foundational knowledge of the CRPD, Disability Inclusive SDGs, and the Strategic Operations Framework. This induction program will be followed by a situational analysis to identify priorities for disability inclusive development. Furthermore, we are actively engaging with stakeholders to raise awareness and promote a culture of inclusion and acceptance with our society. We are also accelerating the process of enacting the Disability Rights Bill. While we acknowledge the progress made, we also recognize that there are still challenges to overcome.
I thank the distinguished delegate of Sri Lanka. I now invite the distinguished delegate from Austria to take the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Austria aligns itself with the EU statement and the statement of the Group of Friends with Disabilities. Austria continues to work intensively and with high priority on implementing the CRPD. In August 23, an Austrian delegation of government experts reported on the progress made and the implementation strategies to the CRPD committee in Geneva during the second state review. The recommendations made by the committee in its concluding observations are of the utmost importance for Austria and will have a lasting impact on Austrian disability policy. The implementation of the second National Action Plan is in full swing. The current Austrian strategy for implementing the CRPD was adopted by the government in 2022 and covers almost all areas of life and policy. All federal ministries and regions are involved in the implementation of 375 concrete measures until 2030, based on the principle of disability mainstreaming. Many of the recommendations made by the CRPD Committee in 23 also coincide with these measures, which gives them additional priority. The current National Action Plan on Disability is accompanied by a comprehensive scientific evaluation. A research team will begin its work in the coming year to improve and further develop implementation processes in a targeted manner. A key component of the evaluation is to propose new additional measures with a particular focus on the recommendations of the committee. The aim is to drive forward their implementation even more intensively and to respond promptly to current national and international developments. A particularly important measure is the ongoing pilot project on personal assistance, which aims to create a harmonized nationwide framework regarding the rules and procedures for providing personal assistance for people with disabilities in all areas of life. The target group receiving personal assistance in line with this project is to be expanded in the future to include people with psychosocial and intellectual disabilities. Standardized criteria are currently defined. Same as last year, our government will provide up to 100 million euros for the implementation in 2024. Mr. President, I would finally like to highlight a very special project in the implementation of the action on disability in the area of culture and history. In cooperation with the Federal Ministry of Social Affairs, Health Care and Consumer Protection, the House of Austrian History currently develops a so-called Disability History Project. Through collection and exhibition of certain historical objects in combination with interviews, the experience of people with disabilities are made visible, accessible, and are permanently secured. This critical look into the past will help raise awareness and shape the future in a forward-looking and sustainably inclusive way. Thank you.
I thank the distinguished delegate of Australia. Now we invite the Commonwealth Disabled People's Forum to take the floor.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Richard Reeser and I am the General Secretary of the Commonwealth Disabled People's Forum. We represent disabled people-led organisations across the Commonwealth. For those who don't know, that's 56 countries representing 2/5 of the world's population, from 30 of the smallest countries, island countries, to the largest country, India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, and indeed 19 countries in Africa, including the largest, Nigeria, Kenya, South Africa. So we are a very diverse group, but what unites us is our commitment to disability rights and equality. And we think that now, 18 years after the convention, we really need to up the game. Because although we do a lot of talking here and a lot of things happen, not much is happening on the ground for the 430 million disabled people in the Commonwealth. And that's really what has to change. So we have to go from talking to walking, as they say, even though that's a disableist metaphor. But nevertheless, we need to put things into action. We aren't just the name. We chose to be disabled people's organisations because we believe it was the historical mission of disabled people's organisations that led to the convention, based on the social model of disability, which is one which sees the oppression that we face as disabled people, whatever our impairment, is socially based. It has come from societies. It isn't given by any super deity or anything else. It is cultural, it is social, and because it is such, it can be changed and has to change. And that hasn't been happening in countries. If we look at what the reports are saying from the UN CRPD committee, there isn't a single country that hasn't had significant criticisms on their implementation of the convention. Now, we can't go on year after year just having those criticisms and very little else happening. some big things have to change. For instance, inclusive education. When we made the convention here, and I was lucky enough to be one of the DPOs who were involved in that, we didn't mention special education in Article 24. We didn't mention special schools. Why? Because we were against them. Yet many countries are still justifying this as a means of bringing disability equality. It will not work. It cannot work. You have to develop full inclusion. When we look at what UNICEF and others are saying, they're only counting the kids in school. What about all the disabled kids, sometimes up to 90% not in school? Nobody is measuring that in the world. That needs to be measured and made accountable. We are bringing forward to our 56 countries in Samoa a
I thank the distinguished delegate. May I now invite the distinguished delegate from Georgia to take the floor.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I am honored to address you today on behalf of my country, Georgia, a proud and independent nation where the rule of law, human rights, principles of transparency, and both traditional and European values are upheld to the highest standards. A year ago, I stood before you discussing Georgia's anticipation of receiving candidate status from the European Union, highlighting the significant contributions of Georgian individuals with disabilities in this journey, particularly in the context of global peacekeeping efforts. Today, I am pleased to announce that Georgia has achieved EU candidate status, and we continue our dignified pursuit of full membership in the European Union. In 1991, Georgia was the first to gain independence from the Soviet Union, a history we hold in great esteem. Despite challenges, we have preserved our sovereignty, and Georgia now plays a crucial role as a middle corridor in linking European and Asia trade routes. Hence, we deeply understand the value of peace and freedom. Dear colleagues, I would like to emphasize the importance of the overarching thematic focus of current session on disability inclusion. Looking ahead of the summit of the future, let us reiterate our commitment to further advance the disability rights with leaving no one behind. One of the areas that we also address within this session is the protection of the persons with disabilities in humanitarian emergencies. In this regard, it is imperative to recognize that occupation poses primary threat. The impact of human rights and humanitarian law violation is particularly severe for persons with disabilities among all ethnic groups residing in Russia-occupied territories of Georgia. The situation becomes even more aggravated due to the pressure exercised by the Russia Federation and its occupation regime on the UN agencies and international NGOs operating in Abkhazia region, which are focused on improvement of humanitarian and human rights conditions of the conflict-affected people. Strong stance of international community and intensified humanitarian efforts are needed to ensure that these individuals can enjoy necessary services and opportunities. In conclusion, 2024 marks the years of the Summer Olympics and Paralympics, a significant event for the 1.2 billion disabled individuals worldwide and for every global citizen. The Paralympic Games exemplify the ideals of equality, peace, and freedom. I am confident that the day is not far when we will achieve Paralympic success alongside our Georgian, Abkhazian, and Ossetian brothers and sisters. No to occupation, yes to peace and equality. Thank you.
I thank the distinguished delegate of Georgia. I now invite the distinguished delegate of Switzerland to take the floor.
Monsieur le Président, la Suisse se félicite que la conférence de cette année invite les États parties à repenser l'inclusion du handicap dans la conjoncture internationale actuelle et dans la perspective du sommet de l'avenir. La Suisse s'aligne pleinement sur la déclaration commune du groupe des amis des personnes handicapées et aimerait ajouter dans sa capacité nationale les points suivants. Comme le souligne la déclaration commune, les trois axes abordés lors de la conférence, à savoir l'innovation technologique, les situations de crise ainsi que le droit à un travail décent et à des moyens de subsistance durables, représentent chacun des défis majeurs. Un point commun à ce thème est leur grande complexité nécessitant néanmoins de la part des États et de la communauté internationale des décisions rapides et de grande portée. Il est essentiel que les États et la communauté internationale prennent d'emblée en compte les droits des personnes handicapées dans la gouvernance de ces défis. Il est particulièrement important de réaffirmer le respect des droits des personnes vivant avec un handicap au niveau international, tant sur le plan des droits de l'homme que du droit international humanitaire. Il s'agit avant tout d'intégrer ces droits dans les lois, politiques et lignes directrices nationales pour que ces droits puissent servir de référence dans des contextes exigeants. Face à ces défis, il faut avant tout une étroite collaboration entre tous les acteurs concernés. Nous devons profiter et apprendre des expériences acquises par les États, la société civile et les autres acteurs de la communauté internationale. La Suisse salue par conséquent le fait que la conférence des États parties de cette année contribue aux initiatives visant à valoriser les acquis, à les traduire en outils concrets et à les intégrer dans des autres domaines politiques au niveau national et international. Je vous remercie.
I thank the delegate of Switzerland for his statement. I now invite the distinguished delegate of the Republic of Namibia to take the floor.
Mr. President, in December 2007, the government of the Republic of Namibia ratified the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities and its protocol. By doing so, we showed our commitment to promote, protect, and ensure the full and equal enjoyment of all human rights and fundamental freedoms by all persons with disabilities. As a state party to the CRPD, I'm pleased to share a few highlights on to how Namibia carries out its obligation. In addition to ensuring regular national reporting, Namibia continues to work towards strengthening our national framework. This includes the current review of the National Disability Council Act and the National Disability Policy, with a view to harmonize and align them to be consistent with the relevant regional and international instruments in our endeavor to build an inclusive society. Namibia is advancing the needs and rights of persons with disabilities by eliminating barriers that hinder their effective, efficient, and full participation in society. In May 2024, the Ministry of Gender Equality, Poverty Eradication, and Social Welfare, which houses disability affairs, undertook consultative visits to 9 of Namibia's 14 regions. These visits enable us to conduct meetings with the disability community and the leadership of regional and local governments. The purpose was to understand the implementation of the UNCRPD by the regional government while providing an opportunity for people with disabilities at the regional level to engage with the national leadership to discuss the challenges they face in their respective regions. Through these visits, our ministry developed a greater appreciation for what Namibia has achieved in terms of disability programs. However, like many other countries, a lot remains to be done in terms of implementation of programs designed to benefit persons with disabilities, given vastness of Namibia and the increased population of persons with disabilities. Mr. President, with the aim of empowering the organizations of persons with disabilities, the Namibian government continues to allocate a budget dedicated to support programs and activities developed and implemented by the OPDs. Government will continue to raise awareness on the rights of persons with disabilities across the country with a view to ensure the inclusion and mainstreaming of persons with disabilities in all developmental activities such as employment, education, sports, health, political, and cultural activities. In partnership with the Motor Vehicle Accidents MVA Fund, the Office of the Disability Affairs has renovated in Southern a Disability Resource Center. The center will soon commence with different skills training activities for persons with disabilities in order for them to create employment for themselves or further their education with other institutions. Mr. President, these are but a snapshot.
I thank the distinguished delegate of the Republic of Namibia. I now invite the distinguished delegate of Honduras to take the floor.
Señor Presidente, nos complace participar de este periodo de sesiones para informar del trabajo que se está desarrollando por parte del Estado de Honduras para avanzar en el cumplimiento de la Convención de los Derechos de las Personas con Discapacidad. en particular en todo lo referido a promover las innovaciones tecnológicas y la transferencia de habilidades digitales, a fin de lograr un futuro inclusivo y empoderar a las personas con discapacidad en el ejercicio de la ciudadanía digital. En la actualidad se están utilizando las aplicaciones Math4All y Navilent con mucho éxito en Honduras. Esto gracias a la asistencia técnica y financiamiento del Banco Interamericano de Desarrollo. Al respecto, quisiéramos destacar que en Honduras se elaboró un nuevo borrador de ley por los derechos de las personas con discapacidad que está sujeto a la aprobación del Congreso Nacional. Esta propuesta, desde sus disposiciones generales, enuncia la importancia de promover el uso y garantía de las tecnologías de información y comunicación, teniendo como vanguardia el uso apropiado de la inteligencia artificial y el rol importante que puede jugar en los procesos de accesibilidad. Este año, Honduras sigue avanzando en los procesos de descentralización de la oferta programática de servicios para personas con discapacidad con base en sus comunidades a través de las 50 unidades municipales de discapacidad que fueron inauguradas en el 2023 y las 60 que se estarán creando en el 2024. Cuyo mandato de funcionamiento está basado en el enfoque de derechos humanos que desde ya utiliza tecnologías de comunicación virtual a través de un sistema informático conectado denominado Sistema de Discapacidad. Señor Presidente, reconocemos que en Honduras, como en muchos países, la brecha de acceso a lo digital sigue siendo muy grande y que los procesos de educación inclusiva están desfasados, por lo que nos comprometemos a acelerar el proceso de construcción de una política pública nacional de discapacidad cuyo contenido asegure la interseccionalidad en el uso de las tecnologías de avanzada para la promoción y acceso de la oferta programática de servicios estatales para personas con discapacidad, lo que incluye también la promoción del acceso a la justicia. En el 2022 se creó la Bolsa Virtual de Empleo para Personas con Discapacidad, un repositorio de hojas de vida de personas con discapacidad que buscan empleo, donde se puede interactuar con representantes de la empresa privada e instituciones públicas para generar accesibilidad en los procesos de empleabilidad. Este año se está priorizando la contratación de mujeres con discapacidad. Al respecto, estamos recibiendo el apoyo técnico y financiero de la Cooperación y Embajada de España en Honduras. En conjunto con el Instituto Nacional de Estadísticas, con la realización del Censo de Población y Vivienda 2024, se diseñó un módulo de preguntas de discapacidad basadas en los lineamientos de Washington, cuyos resultados serán muy fundamentales para la elaboración de la nueva política de discapacidad, especialmente en la creación.
I thank the distinguished delegate of Honduras for her statement. I now invite the distinguished delegate of Ireland to take the floor.
Chair, Vice Chair, distinguished delegates, Ireland aligns itself with the statement of the European Union, and I have the honour to deliver this statement on behalf of Ireland today. 25% of the world's population lives with disability, and an estimated 80% of this number live in developing countries and in areas with high risks of natural disasters and armed conflicts. Ireland therefore welcomes the theme of this year's conference. It is timely that we come together to rethink disability inclusion ahead of the Summit of the Future. Promoting human rights, including those of persons with disabilities, is a core priority of Ireland's foreign policy, and reaching those furthest behind, including persons with disabilities, is a guiding principle of Ireland's international development and humanitarian action. This Conference of State Parties is particularly timely for Ireland as we are in the process of developing our next National Disability Strategy. This strategy will set out a blueprint for the further implementation of the UN CRPD in Ireland and will mark a significant milestone as we continue to strive toward a more inclusive society. The development process for the strategy has been underpinned by robust and extensive consultation in which the voices of persons with disabilities were at the very centre. The next National Disability Strategy will act as a framework for whole-of-government action on disability. It will embed structures to support continued and strengthened stakeholder engagement across government. Chair, Vice Chair, distinguished delegates, I would like to thank the committee for the priorities selected for roundtable discussions during this 17th Conference of State Parties. We welcome the focus on decent work and sustainable livelihoods. Ireland's next strategy will take employment as a key consideration and will emphasise the absolute necessity that persons with disabilities are afforded the same opportunities as everyone else to live and maintain their lives of their choosing and to build fulfilling careers. Ireland's next National Disability Strategy will seek to build on the ever-advancing possibilities of assistive technologies and ensure that we harness these to better vindicate the rights of disabled persons to live independently and autonomously. We also welcome the focus of one of this year's sub-themes on increasing global access to technology and innovations for an inclusive future. We are conscious that we gather this week in the context of the world that is grappling with conflict and crisis. Persons with disabilities face significant personal protection risks in situations of conflict and often face greater barriers to receiving humanitarian assistance than others. We are pleased, therefore, to see a focus on the rights of persons with disabilities in response to emergencies and collective action on crises like climate change. We must not waste this opportunity to come together and determine how we can work collectively as an international community to ensure that disabled persons across the world are empowered to live full lives of their own choosing. Thank you.
I thank the distinguished delegate of Ireland for his statement. I now invite the distinguished delegate of Bulgaria to take the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Allow me to start by congratulating you and the Bureau on the excellent stewardship of the conference. You can count on Bulgaria's continued support. Bulgaria aligns itself with the statement made by the European Union and on behalf of the group of Friends of Persons with Disabilities, and I would like to add a few points in my national capacity. This year's theme on rethinking disability inclusion in the current international juncture and ahead of the Summit of the Future is timely and crucial. Bulgaria is committed to supporting persons with disabilities in exercising their rights through our policies on employment, accessibility, and social inclusion. We have taken significant steps over the past decade, and especially since 2018, to reform for the social sphere and improve the quality of life for persons with disabilities. Promoting employment for persons with disabilities is a key priority for Bulgaria. Various measures, such as financial support for employers, workplace adaptation, and personal assistance, have been introduced to reduce the employment gap between persons with and without disabilities. For instance, the Agency for Persons with Disabilities provides financial support to employers for access, adaptation, and workplace equipment benefiting persons with permanent disabilities. This includes reimbursing 30% of the insurance contributions paid by employers for employed persons with disabilities. Additionally, specialized enterprises receive funding to ensure employment and technological renewal, creating jobs for long-term unemployed individuals with disabilities. Bulgaria's National Strategy for Persons with Disabilities 2021-2030 is aligned with CRPD and puts an emphasis on socio-economic support, inclusive employment, and social entrepreneurship. Since 2019, the National Program for Accessible Living Environments and Personal Mobility has been implemented annually to build accessible environments and ensure personal mobility. The standardized package of services created for persons with disabilities builds on other services and provides comprehensive support for sustainable employment. Bulgaria also focuses on international cooperation to promote technology innovations for an inclusive future. The provision of aid for persons with permanent disabilities project under the Bulgaria's Recovery and Sustainable Plan provides high-tech mobility aids supporting around 3,300 individuals with permanent disabilities. In conclusion, Bulgaria reaffirms its commitment to the full inclusion of persons with disabilities. As Stevie Wonder reminds us, just because a man lacks the use of his eyes doesn't mean he lacks vision. We are convinced that societies can only succeed by empowering all individuals and ensuring that
I thank Her Excellency, the Ambassador of Bulgaria, for her statement. I now invite the distinguished delegate of Guatemala to take the floor.
Muchas gracias, señor presidente y distinguidos participantes. Un saludo de la República de Guatemala a todos los representantes que conforman los estados parte de la Convención sobre los Derechos de las Personas con Discapacidad. Desde hace 27 años, el Consejo Nacional para la Atención de Personas con Discapacidad, CONADI, trabaja para coordinar, asesorar e impulsar políticas que aseguren los derechos y libertades fundamentales de todas las personas con discapacidad. Como representante de CONADI, quiero destacar nuestro trabajo conjunto con organizaciones de y para personas con discapacidad y los poderes del Estado para garantizar leyes inclusivas. A pesar de ser un país de dimensiones modestas y enfrentar desafíos significativos como la pobreza y la exclusión social, hemos logrado avances notables. Desde el año 2007 contamos con una política nacional de discapacidad fruto de un amplio proceso de consulta y participación. En el año 2008 se ratificó la Convención sobre los Derechos de las Personas con Discapacidad. Guatemala ha adoptado normativas internacionales como la Convención Interamericana para la Eliminación de todas las formas de discriminación contra las personas con discapacidad, ratificada en el año 1999, y el Tratado de Marrakech en el año 2016. Reformamos la Ley de Derechos de Autor y Derechos Conexos para garantizar la accesibilidad a textos literarios en el año 2018. Aprobamos la Ley de Lengua de Señas de Guatemala, Lensegua, en el año 2020, reconociéndola oficialmente como un idioma, beneficiando así a 250,000 personas. Y en este año 2024 logramos la aprobación de la Ley de Certificación Biopsicosocial de las Personas con Discapacidad, garantizando su personalidad jurídica e inclusión en programas sociales. Nuestro compromiso se refuerza con la cooperación internacional en áreas como emprendimiento, sostenibilidad, nutrición, salud, educación y accesibilidad. Juntos, trabajamos por una Guatemala más inclusiva. Es por ello que el Estado de Guatemala se compromete firmemente a seguir avanzando en el cumplimiento de los derechos de las personas con discapacidad, promoviendo una ciudadanía plena e inclusiva. Muchas gracias.
I thank the distinguished delegate of Guatemala for her statement. I now invite the distinguished delegate of Hungary to take the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Dear Excellencies, dear colleagues and friends, we remain firmly committed to advancing the rights of persons with disabilities. Our tradition, we have had 3 elected experts to the UNCRPD committee, and the conducted efforts made so far in the field of disability remains the main tool for implementing the UNCRPD. During the last 10 years, employers have been able to receive support through tenders. On average, nearly 400 accredited employers provide rehabilitation employment for approximately 31,000 persons whose health and working status of 2/3 of the employees is below 50%. Therefore, we are convinced that we are on the right track due to the fact that overall more than 5,100 persons with disabilities are already gainfully employed. So it can be concluded that a significant proportion of those affected, 75%, work already on the open labor market. It means that since 2010, although Hungary was one of the worst performing countries in the EU in terms of employment of persons with disabilities, their employment rate has risen from 18% to almost 50% by 2024. This is why in October, the Hungarian government plans to hold this time the 4th international conference with the title of You Are the Value, focusing on employment and reasonable accommodation. When it comes to employment, transport could also be a serious and challenging issue. The government of Hungary has just introduced a new policy and traveling scheme as a good example for citizens living with disabilities in the country. This means that people with disabilities and their companions who have been entitled to 90% discount on state rail services are able to travel free of charge since this March. Moreover, the Hungarian Sign Language Interpreting Service, which is not only an excellent technical example but also free of charge service, has recently become a national and well-established service. Therefore, with state subsidized and regulated access to more than 4,300 clients, the independent living of deaf and hearing impaired people communicating in sign language become a reality. Free sign language interpretation is now available at more than 300 government offices, state document offices, and for 2,500 types of cases. Even more, since the end of this last year, the major mobile operators' main branches have also been involved in providing sign language.
I thank the distinguished delegate of Hungary for his very insightful statement. I now invite the Australian Federation of Disability Organizations to take the floor.
Hello, my name is Trevor Carroll, Vice President and International Coordinator for the Australian Federation of Disability Organisations, which is a sole Australian member of Disabled People's International, DPI. I'm also the World President of DPI after elections in August last year and the adoption of a draft unified constitution which was finalised a few months ago in March 2024. This will be officially registered in Europe in coming months, uniting the organisation with its origins from 1981. We are all here to discuss the COSP17 overarching theme of rethinking disability inclusion in the current international juncture ahead of the Summit of the Future, which is going to be hosted by the UN General Assembly in September this year. It's being called a once-in-a-generation opportunity aiming to strengthen global governance for the sake of present and future generations. I also note the sub-theme for COSP is international cooperation to promote technology, innovations and transfer for an inclusive future. Whilst the CRPD is a legally binding agreement between member states who have signed and ratified the convention, the UN itself is not a signatory to the CRPD. So why is it that only 15 secondary passes for civil society wheelchair and mobility scooter representatives were allocated for the opening session in the General Assembly Hall yesterday, with the rest reserved for member states? I was one of those 15, and here is the pass that I was given to get into the event. I needed to get into this one as well today, but my wife can get in for nothing. She doesn't have to have this one. So only 2 of us with those secondary passes yesterday, 13.3%, had access to and used the white earpieces to listen to translations of those who were speaking. This is blatant disability discrimination and a breach of the original UN Charter. It made me feel isolated, unimportant, insignificant, undermined, insulted, offended and outraged for me and my colleagues. If a member state hosted an event and did this, they would be in breach of the CRPD. To add further insult, I noted that many of the reserved member state seats, wheelchair spaces, were empty. However, the only other option for us with wheelchairs was to go up on the balcony at the back, which is inaccessible. The General Assembly Hall has a seating capacity of 1,800 people, with each delegation having 6 seats. Imagine the outcry if 13.3% or only 239 delegates had access to the venue and the white translation earpieces. What happened to us is disgraceful and it's totally unacceptable. A complaint to the Human Rights Council is useless in this case because the UN is not a member state. So this complaint is directed to the UN Office of Internal Oversight Services, which since 1994 has been mandated to provide the Secretary-General and the General Assembly with...
I thank the representative of the Australian Federation of Disability Organisations. The contents of your statement, sir, will be duly noted. We now have a video statement by the distinguished representative of Peru.
Estimadas y estimados representantes de los Estados partes, desde hace 16 años la Convención sobre los Derechos de las Personas con Discapacidad viene orientando el desarrollo normativo peruano con la finalidad de garantizar a las personas con discapacidad el ejercicio pleno de sus derechos. Me complace compartir algunos de los principales logros que hemos obtenido durante este proceso. La Ley General de la Persona con Discapacidad establece el marco legal para la promoción y protección de este colectivo. Durante los últimos años hemos fortalecido nuestro corpus legal para desarrollar un ecosistema de inclusión destinado a lograr que la persona con discapacidad comparezca por sí mismo en la esfera pública, sin ningún tipo de cortapisas, y para ello hemos implementado acciones destinadas a la transversalización de la perspectiva de discapacidad en todos los sectores y niveles de gobierno, con la finalidad de eliminar la discriminación estructural. En el año 2018 se aprobó el Decreto Legislativo 1384, que reconoce la plena capacidad jurídica a las personas con discapacidad. Además, se promulgó el Decreto Legislativo 1417, que garantiza su derecho a ajustes razonables en el lugar de trabajo, en el campo educativo y en los procesos judiciales y administrativos. Se ha fortalecido la legislación en materia de accesibilidad mediante la modificación de la norma técnica A120 del Reglamento Nacional de Edificaciones. Asimismo, contamos con programas accesibles en medios de comunicación nacional, tradicional y digital, reconociendo así la importancia del acceso a la información. Otro hito relevante es la aprobación de la Política Nacional Multisectorial en Discapacidad para el Desarrollo al 2030, que en su tercer año de implementación ha logrado importantes resultados en el fortalecimiento de la sociedad civil mediante acciones de capacitación a organizaciones de personas con discapacidad. En materia educativa, se capacita a los docentes de todos los niveles y modalidades sobre los ajustes razonables, adecuaciones curriculares y adaptaciones metodológicas. En materia de acceso a la justicia, se cuenta con servicios de asesorías y patrocinio legal gratuito. Por último, hemos tomado acciones para cumplir con las 72 recomendaciones dadas por el Comité sobre los Derechos de las Personas con Discapacidad de las Naciones Unidas, luego de la presentación del segundo y tercer informe combinado del 2023. Estamos listos para asegurar el proceso del Perú como un país inclusivo, decidido a eliminar las barreras que generan discapacidad, y aprovecho esta oportunidad para reiterarlo frente a todos ustedes. Muchas gracias.
I thank the distinguished delegate of Peru for her statement. Now we will have the last speaker under the general debate for this morning. I invite the distinguished delegate of Qatar to take the floor.
السيد الرئيس، نود بداية أن نهنئكم على انتخابكم رئيساً للدورة 17 لمؤتمر الدول الأطراف في اتفاقية حقوق الأشخاص ذوي الإعاقة، ونؤكد لكم دعم دولة قطر للمضي قدماً بأعمال الدورة والتعاون مع كافة أعضاء المكتب. ويسعدنا ما يشكله مؤتمر الدول الأطراف من آلية راسخة ومهمة لتعزيز التنفيذ ورصد الاتفاقية، وما يتيحه من فرصة فريدة أمام الدول الأطراف وغيرها لتبادل المعلومات والخبرات لتعزيز تنفيذ الاتفاقية. ونتطلع لتخصيص المزيد من الوقت من أجل التبادل التفاعلي للآراء بين الدول ولتقاسم الخبرات، سواء خلال المناقشات العامة أو في مناقشات الموائد المستديرة. السيد الرئيس، تعد دولة قطر من أوائل الدول التي صادقت على الاتفاقية، ولقد ساهمت دولة قطر خلال العقود الماضية وما زالت في تسخير كل السبل الممكنة لكفالة حقوق الأشخاص ذوي الإعاقة على كافة الأصعدة وفي جميع المجالات. كما قامت دولة قطر بإعداد استراتيجية وطنية لحقوق الأشخاص ذوي الإعاقة، وواصلت جهودها المستمرة في سياسة الدمج التعليمي التي بدأتها الأجهزة المخصصة في دولة قطر منذ عام 2000، وبرامج القدرة الوطنية من خلال برامج قطر المتطورة لتأهيل العاملين في مجال الإعاقة. كما أولت دولة قطر اهتماما ملحوظا بالاستمرار في جعل المباني والمنشآت في الدولة تستجيب لمتطلبات مستخدميها من ذوي الإعاقة. إن جهود دولة قطر في إنفاذ حقوق الأشخاص ذوي الإعاقة والوفاء بالخدمات التي تقدمها لهم كان بفضل البيئة الداعمة لتحقيق هذه الإنجازات وتوجيهات القيادة السياسية للدولة، التي تؤكد التوجه الحقوقي نحو الأشخاص ذوي الإعاقة وضرورة الاستثمار فيهم وأهمية شمولهم بمظلة الحماية الاجتماعية والتمكين الاقتصادي والربح في جميع الخدمات وفي مراحل الحياة. ختاماً، نغتنم فرصة مشاركتنا اليوم لنؤكد لكم التزام دولة قطر بالتنفيذ الفاعل للاتفاقية ومواصلة الجهود لتعزيز حقوق الأشخاص ذوي الإعاقة، وفي إطار المساعي المبذولة لعدم تخلف أحد عن الركب وتحقيق خطط التنمية المستدامة لعام 2030 نود التأكيد على أهمية مواصلة التعاون وتضافر الجهود للتغلب على العديد من العوائق التي لا تزال قائمة وأوجه عدم المساواة، ومن بينها الافتقار إلى فرص الحصول على التعليم والعمالة والرعاية الصحية ونظم الدعم الاجتماعي والقانوني. شكرا سيد الرئيس.
I thank the distinguished representative of Qatar, Her Excellency the Ambassador, for her statement. We will now suspend the general debate, and the general debate will continue for the first hour of the afternoon beginning at 3 o'clock. I will now give a housekeeping break of about 5 minutes, allowing for the distinguished panelists of Roundtable 1 to take their seats. The time now is 11 o'clock, so we will commence Roundtable 1 at 11:05. Please be in your seats by then. Thank you. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, I call to order Roundtable 1, entitled International Cooperation to Promote Technology Innovations and Transfer for an Inclusive Future. I have the pleasure of co-chairing this roundtable along with my civil society colleague, Dr. Joseph Murray, on my right, of the World Federation of the Deaf. Dr. Joseph Murray is President of the World Federation of the Deaf and board member of the International Disability Alliance. Dr. Murray has over 25 years of experience in international disability rights and has worked as an advisor for NGOs and deaf and disability communities in over 50 different countries, including most recently as member of the official Norwegian Government Commission for Sign Language. Dr. Murray is a professor of deaf studies at Galado University. To introduce myself, my name is Sugishwara Gunaratne. I assumed duties as the Deputy Permanent Representative of Sri Lanka in January 2022. I was previously the Acting Director General and spokesperson of the Foreign Ministry of Sri Lanka. I have served as the Ambassador of Sri Lanka to Ethiopia and the Permanent Representative to the African Union. I joined the Sri Lanka Foreign Service in year 2000 and served at the Sri Lankan diplomatic missions in London, New Delhi, and Geneva. Today, together with Dr. Murray, we will facilitate this roundtable discussion on the urgent and pertinent issue of international cooperation to promote technology innovations and transfer for an inclusive future. Before we get started, I would like to present you with some background information to lay the groundwork for today's discussion. The forthcoming Summit of the Future will represent a pivotal opportunity to bolster cooperation on critical challenges and advance a revitalized multilateral framework to enhance the well-being of individuals. Technology presents a vast potential to improve the lives of persons with disabilities and contribute to the implementation of the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. Technological advancements have transformative potential, significantly enhancing inclusivity and empowerment for individuals with disabilities by improving access to essential services, communication, mobility, and societal participation. Assistive technologies like screen readers and adaptive keyboards enable individuals to perform tasks otherwise challenging or impossible. The proliferation of accessible ICT, including EdTech tools, communication apps, telemedicine, and smart city initiatives, revolutionizes accessibility and communication for people with disabilities. Artificial intelligence emerges as a key enabler of disability inclusion, offering innovative solutions to accessibility challenges across domains. AI-driven technologies such as smart home systems and speech recognition empower individuals with disabilities to live more independently. International cooperation can play a key role in overcoming the lack of access to technologies by addressing the causes at the root of accessibility. Collaboration among governments, international organizations, academia, and industry stakeholders is crucial for successful technology transfers, adaptation to local contexts, and addressing ethical implications associated with AI. The existing international cooperation frameworks and initiatives highlight a consistent approach to enhancing technology innovation and transfer for the inclusion of persons with disabilities. Article 32 of the Convention emphasizes the significance of international cooperation in enhancing access to and the sharing of accessible and assistive technologies. The political declaration, Universal Health Coverage, expanding our ambition for health and well-being in a post-COVID world, of the high-level meeting on universal health coverage held in 2023, recognized across all the goals and targets of the 2030 Agenda the fundamental importance of universal health coverage inclusive of access to assistive technology. Despite the existence of these and more normative frameworks, there are still multifaceted barriers impeding technology transfer. Distinguished panelists, delegates, and partners, this roundtable presents an important opportunity to facilitate cross-sectoral discussions concerning international cooperation for disability rights and technology. It is aimed at highlighting crucial challenges and opportunities, sharing experiences and successful approaches, and suggesting strategies to enhance international cooperation to advance disability rights within the realms of innovation and technology. Without further ado, it is my great honor to introduce and extend a warm welcome to our distinguished panelists, Mr. Konstantinos Stefanidis of the Hellenic National Accessibility Authority of Greece, Mr. Mamadou Lamine Fati Office for the Promotion and Protection of the Rights of Persons with Disabilities of Senegal, Ms. Maria Jose Carranza, UN Youth, San Carlos de Guatemala University, Guatemala, Ms. Hyodis Haraldsdottir, World Federation of the Deaf of Iceland. Ladies and gentlemen, we will shortly invite each of our panelists to deliver their presentation for 10 minutes to share their thoughts and insights on this crucial issue. Following the presentations, we will invite delegations and observers to participate in an interactive dialogue through a Q&A session, to pose questions to the panel or to make brief comments that are relevant and may contribute to the discussion of this roundtable. Participants who wish to take the floor are invited to press the button on their desk after the chair opens the floor. When given the floor, please unmute your microphone and identify yourself and your delegation or organization before posing your questions or comments. Please note that all interventions are strictly limited to 2 minutes with no exception in order to ensure the discussion is interactive and to allow for wide participation. Ladies and gentlemen, I will now hand over to Dr. Joseph Murray, my civil society co-chair, to take over the proceedings. Over to you, Dr. Murray.
Thank you, Ambassador Guanaratna. Dear colleagues, it is my great honor to introduce and invite our first panelist, Mr. Konstantinos Stefanidis, the Hellenic National Assembly Authority of Greece, to the floor. Mr. Konstantinos Stefanidis is the president of the Hellenic National Accessibility Authority. He's a professor in the Department of Computer Science at the University of Crete and the former director of the Institute of Computer Science, fourth, and founder and head of its Human-Computer Interaction and Ambient Intelligence Laboratory. He is the scientific responsible person for more than 180 projects funded by the national, European, and international bodies and industry, the editor of 2 international journals and many handbooks and conference proceedings, and the author of more than 800 scientific articles. His expertise includes HCI, digital accessibility, universal access, and human-centered artificial intelligence. Mr. Stefanidis, the floor is yours. Please remember to keep to the 10-minute time limit for your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairs. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, central to the rights of persons with disabilities are the principles of individual autonomy, non-discrimination, and accessibility for full and effective participation in society. While accessibility refers equally to the built environment, physical products, real-world services, and the digital realm, the focus of my brief presentation will be on digital accessibility issues. Digital accessibility is a broad domain that has been extensively researched for several decades. It aims to ensure that digital tools and technologies are designed and developed so that everyone can use them, including persons with disabilities. Over the years, the field has yielded a wealth of guidelines, assistive technologies, frameworks, and tools that support the design and development of accessible systems and applications. In this context, Design for All approach entails an effort to build accessibility features into digital products and services by design and throughout the entire development life cycle. Additionally, international organizations have taken an active role in promoting digital accessibility, while individual countries and supranational unions have introduced policy and legal initiatives to ensure it. So, why are we still experiencing the effects of a gap that exists between policy and practice? Digital accessibility, despite being a well-researched domain, often falls short of expectations. But if we wish to aspire for a truly inclusive future, we need to first of all ensure that we have created an inclusive present, fostered by leveraging the knowledge and results germinated over the past decades. In our quest for digital accessibility, we need to first comprehend the underlying factors that impede adherence to established legislation before we can devise and implement appropriate remedial measures. Existing research results highlight that the factors hindering the adoption of accessibility by design include resource constraints, lack of awareness, and inadequacy of existing tools. Software developers themselves have identified that they face major challenges due to the lack of prior appropriate education in university courses, rendering for them the required knowledge and skills acquisition a personal endeavor. Therefore, a major step forward would be to give the topic of digital accessibility in university curricula the prominence that it deserves. Other challenges include the fact that digital accessibility is not easy to master, given the abundance of guidelines, their complexity, and the difficulties in appropriately evaluating and validating it. What is urgently needed is the development of a new generation of tools that can streamline the implementation and validation process, summarize effectively the applicable guidelines, provide appropriate examples, and support the evaluation and documentation of results. And all that in an iterative manner, allowing for continuous improvement and refinement. The key in this pursuit is the involvement in the evaluation process of both experts and end users, thus ensuring that the assessment of digital accessibility adopts a human-centered focus and perspective. This human-centered focus is also necessary for promoting an inclusive future for technological innovations. Artificial intelligence is currently a widely debated domain, particularly concerning its implications with regard to fairness, trustworthiness, and inclusiveness. This encompasses a wider range of issues that promote equal rights for all individuals globally, regardless of their origin, culture, socioeconomic status, or technological expertise, and facilitate equal opportunities of benefit from utilization of AI. So this discussion is not only applicable to persons with disabilities, as the issue of inclusiveness of AI technologies is of equal concern and value for all other vulnerable groups, as well as the general population. A major issue regarding persons with disabilities refers to the fairness of AI, artificial intelligence, and to the need for not only avoiding discrimination against them, but more importantly, proactively taking steps to ensure that artificial intelligence systems are usable and useful to them. This demands that artificial intelligence developers consider the broad variety of factors, including the data used to train artificial intelligence models, the algorithms used to process that data, but also human biases that may inadvertently embed it into the AI algorithms. Therefore, the development of AI systems necessitates an inherently multidisciplinary approach, calling for collaboration among experts from diverse fields in order to foster inclusivity, fairness, and ethical conduct. Finally, it is not enough for systems and services to be digitally accessible, usable, understandable, and human-centric if the actual use by persons with disabilities is inhibited for financial reasons. This means that any such system should also be affordable, thus necessitating the formulation of policies supporting the widespread adoption of accessible digital systems and services. Looking ahead to a digitally accessible future, it is important that we insist on the priority that artificial intelligence technologies are designed with humans in mind, promoting inclusivity, fairness, and transparency, following accessibility guidelines involving end users, including people with disabilities, in the design process, and collaborating with field experts with the overall aim to create a human-centered, universally designed artificial intelligence. It is evident that an inclusive technological future requires multidisciplinary efforts and strong collaboration at multiple levels. Academics, researchers, software developers working in industry, policymakers, and end users themselves are called upon to contribute to the creation of a more equitable and sustainable world for all, taking advantage of the transformative capabilities of artificial intelligence technologies. But this is not enough. International cooperation is essential in promoting technological innovations, introducing regulations to address the challenges and the ethical concerns that may arise from these innovations, and facilitating the transfer of technology for an inclusive future. In this respect, knowledge sharing, capacity building, joint research and development, financial assistance, policy alignment, and public-private partnerships are tools at our disposal to foster international cooperation. In our increasingly interconnected and globalized world, international cooperation is essential in order to effectively address the multifaceted challenges of inclusion, as global challenges require global solutions. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Konstantinos Stefanidis, for your excellent presentation. Our next speaker will be Mr. Mamadou Lamine Fati from the Office for the Promotion and Protection of the Rights of People with Disabilities in Senegal. Mr. Mamadou Lamine Fati is a social work advisor. Since 2012, he's held the position of the Director of the Promotion and Protection of Persons with Disabilities in Senegal at the Ministry of Health and Social Action. He holds an advanced degree in social work from the National School of Specialized Social Workers in Dakar. Mr. Mamadou Lamine Fati, welcome to the panel. The floor is yours.
Monsieur le Président, distingués participants, je voudrais vous transmettre les salutations de toute la délégation sénégalaise. Le thème de la communication que j'ai l'honneur de présenter s'intitule « La carte d'égalité des chances, une innovation technologique et un mécanisme phare d'inclusion du handicap au Sénégal ». Le plan de la communication comprend 4 points. Le premier point est relatif au contexte et à ce titre, j'aimerais souligner qu'au Sénégal, les personnes handicapées représentent 5,9% de la population totale, soit en valeur absolue 1 110 274 habitants. Le cadre stratégique et politique de gestion du handicap au Sénégal est adossé à des référentiels globaux tels que les objectifs de développement durable et la stratégie de réadaptation à base communautaire et repose essentiellement sur 3 piliers d'ordre juridique, institutionnel et programmatique. Pour le rappel, la carte d'égalité des chances est un filet social multisectoriel et un mécanisme phare d'inclusion du handicap institué par la loi nationale relative au handicap adoptée en 2010. La production de la carte d'égalité des chances est réglementée par un décret et son spécimen est fixé par un arrêté ministériel. La délivrance de la carte d'égalité des chances favorise l'accès des personnes handicapées à 7 services sociaux de base relatifs à la santé, la réadaptation, l'éducation, la formation, les transports, l'emploi et les finances. À présent, je vais aborder la deuxième partie de ma communication relative aux résultats sur la période 2012-2023. D'abord, les résultats dans le domaine technologique. Dans le domaine technologique, la carte d'égalité des chances est un concept dynamique et innovant, caractérisé par la mise en œuvre d'une plateforme et d'un système d'information et de gestion qui se présente comme suit. Le système que j'ai évoqué assure la protection des données personnelles des personnes handicapées. Il génère un spécimen qui se présente en format recto et verso. Cette carte également est fabriquée avec du matériau PVC. Également, elle est gérée, cette carte, par une plateforme décentralisée et connectée à l'Internet avec des codes d'accès pour les administrateurs. La plateforme de la carte d'égalité des chances génère à l'échelle un certificat de handicap à titre provisoire qui a la même valeur juridique que la carte d'égalité des chances en application donc de l'article 49 de la loi. La carte a 2 fonctions, une fonction d'identification et une fonction de statistique. Elle est en mesure de générer des données statistiques sur les personnes handicapées. Elle est également la plateforme, elle peut générer des listes, notamment des listes Excel et PDF, donc des personnes handicapées. Et enfin, la plateforme est corrélée à un système d'évaluation des handicaps qui est paramétré, donc, je disais, au sein de la plateforme. Hein. Ce système d'évaluation du handicap est aligné sur des normes internationales, notamment la CIF, et donc une autre norme québécoise, notamment le MAVI. Et donc, je vais venir donc, à présent souligner les résultats toujours du programme de la carte d'égalité des chances sur la période dans le domaine de la protection sociale. Alors, sur la période 2012 à 2023, donc le Sénégal a produit 75 098 cartes d'égalité des chances et donc 64 311 personnes handicapées ont eu accès à des bourses de sécurité familiale. 24 728 personnes handicapées ont eu accès à la couverture sanitaire universelle. 633 personnes handicapées ont eu accès gratuitement aux services de transport public, qui d'ailleurs est dynamique en construction, parce qu'aujourd'hui au Sénégal, il y a des transports de dernière génération et on est en train de travailler pour l'accès des personnes handicapées à ces nouveaux systèmes de transport. Durant la phase de riposte contre la COVID-19, 54 219 personnes handicapées ont eu accès à des kits alimentaires et des kits d'hygiène. Et aussi, il faut noter que 8 605 personnes handicapées ont été appareillées. Dans le domaine de l'éducation, 2 524 enfants handicapés ont obtenu des appuis scolaires et 889 organisations de personnes handicapées ont obtenu des financements donc, au sein de leurs organisations. Et enfin, 2427 jeunes handicapés ont obtenu des bourses de formation professionnelle. Dans la troisième partie de ma communication, je vais aborder les défis pour l'inclusion du handicap et la gestion optimale du programme de la carte d'égalité des chances. Le premier défi est relatif à la mise en œuvre intégrale des mécanismes de la loi d'orientation sociale relative au handicap. Et ces mécanismes sont au nombre de 16. La synergie et l'inclusion des programmes gouvernementaux de protection sociale, l'interopérabilité des systèmes d'information et de protection sociale, parce que divers programmes ont des systèmes, il faut les interconnecter, la mobilisation accrue des ressources financières pour la gestion du handicap, le développement du partenariat et la coopération dans le domaine du handicap. Et enfin, le dernier défi, c'est l'accès universel des personnes handicapées aux ressources et aux services essentiels. Je vais terminer à présent ma communication par les perspectives. Les perspectives pour l'inclusion du handicap et la mise en œuvre optimale du programme de la carte d'égalité des chances se présentent comme suit. Nous avons synthétisé 3 perspectives. Premièrement, la mise en œuvre du projet d'extension de la carte d'égalité des chances sur la période 2022-2026. Le développement de la plateforme et du cadre institutionnel de gestion de la carte d'égalité des chances par la création et l'équipement de bureaux régionaux, le paramétrage d'un module de géolocalisation des personnes handicapées. Et enfin, dernière perspective, c'est le renforcement de la coopération technique et financière avec le Sénégal dans le domaine du handicap. Je vous remercie de votre aimable attention.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mamadou Lamine Fati, for your contribution. Now it's my honor to present our next panelist, Ms. Maria Jose Carranza, the UN Youth, San Carlos de Guatemala University, Guatemala. Ms. Carranza graduated in psychology from Universidad de San Carlos de Guatemala. She's a para-archery female athlete. She's a member of the first cohort of the United Nations Population Foundation Youth Advisory Group in Guatemala and the Productive People with Disability Association. She's a Global Partnership for Education youth leader representing Guatemala, and she's an advocacy leader for guaranteed human rights for people with disabilities in a variety of civil society spaces. Ms. Carranza, you have the floor.
Muchas gracias. Buenos días para todos y todas. Es para mí un honor estar en este espacio. La tecnología y la ciencia son fundamentales para ejercer derechos como la educación, la salud, el empleo y el intercambio de conocimientos, y sirve como medio para que las personas jóvenes accedamos a la información, incluyendo sobre emergencias humanitarias y servicios de protección. Con la Cumbre del Futuro es esencial fomentar la colaboración entre gobiernos, sector privado, organizaciones no gubernamentales y la sociedad civil para compartir conocimientos, recursos y tecnologías que puedan transformar vidas. La innovación tecnológica puede ser una poderosa herramienta de inclusión, desde dispositivos de asistencia y aplicaciones móviles hasta plataformas de educación accesible y entornos laborales adaptados. Pero para que todos tengan un impacto real, deben ser accesibles y asequibles. La investigación sobre personas jóvenes con discapacidad que lideró la Oficina de Juventud de Naciones Unidas y el equipo de trabajo de discapacidad de Juventud 2030 muestra que la tecnología es una herramienta clave para promover el desarrollo de capacidades y habilidades. Además, es una herramienta para empoderar a las personas jóvenes con discapacidad y que participemos activamente en procesos de toma de decisiones. También refleja un problema constante en la marginación de las mujeres jóvenes con discapacidad en procesos de toma de decisiones y oportunidades de formación y capacitación, alcanzando la independencia tardíamente. Enfrentamos desempleo y sobreprotección. Tenemos menos acceso a la educación y tecnologías, lo que aumenta nuestra probabilidad de vivir en pobreza. Las juventudes y las mujeres jóvenes con discapacidad podemos y debemos influir significativamente en decisiones críticas y espacios de política, aportando nuestro conocimiento, perspectivas y haciendo incidencia activa para que la participación juvenil significativa sea y esté en el centro de las acciones del sistema de cooperación internacional. Las innovaciones tecnológicas tienen el potencial de mejorar significativamente la inclusión y el empoderamiento de las personas jóvenes con discapacidad. Facilitan el acceso a servicios esenciales y mejoran la comunicación y movilidad, y fomentan una mayor participación en la sociedad. La Oficina de Juventud tiene una guía corta para la participación significativa de personas jóvenes con discapacidad en acción humanitaria, con recomendaciones concretas para que la respuesta de emergencias promueva la participación juvenil significativa e inclusiva. Por ejemplo, en los proyectos de respuesta humanitaria, los actores humanitarios deben consultar activamente a las personas jóvenes con discapacidad sobre nuestras necesidades y propuestas, que seamos el público objetivo de la respuesta y que existan indicadores específicos para medir el progreso, además de incluir un presupuesto específico para la inclusión de las personas jóvenes con discapacidad, incluyendo el uso de tecnologías de asistencia. La respuesta humanitaria debe garantizar la provisión de ajustes razonables e implementar mecanismos y espacios de retroalimentación con personas jóvenes con discapacidad y nuestras organizaciones. Por otro lado, la inteligencia artificial está a la vanguardia para permitir que las personas jóvenes con discapacidad vivamos de manera independiente, ofreciendo soluciones educativas y sanitarias, y facilitando la verificación y cumplimiento de normas de accesibilidad. Para que esto ocurra, las innovaciones deben adaptarse a los contextos locales y responder a las necesidades específicas de las diversas poblaciones. La transferencia de tecnología es crucial para abordar desafíos globales, promoviendo la innovación, apoyando el desarrollo sostenible y garantizando un acceso equitativo a la tecnología. Uno de los compromisos de Naciones Unidas es empoderar a las personas en situación de vulnerabilidad mediante el uso responsable de la ciencia, la tecnología y la innovación, asegurando que nadie se quede atrás. Se necesitan medidas colaborativas en investigación, intercambio de conocimientos, provisión de asistencia técnica y económica para facilitar la transferencia de tecnología y asegurar el acceso equitativo al entorno físico, el transporte, la información y las comunicaciones en todos los países. En todo este proceso es necesario desarrollar las capacidades de las personas jóvenes con discapacidad que permitan nuestra participación plena y equitativa en la economía digital y aumentar el uso de la ciencia y las pruebas científicas en la elaboración de políticas y programas. Una ciencia que no reproduzca estigmas y estereotipos, sino que ayude a transformarlos y a derribar barreras. Muchas personas jóvenes no tienen la oportunidad de adquirir una alfabetización digital mediante su sistema educativo. En particular, la capacidad de abordar información, la protección de sus datos, su privacidad y bienestar en espacios en línea. Esto tiene efectos notables en las personas jóvenes que a menudo se deja atrás y quienes sufrimos distintas formas de violencia y acoso online. Para cerrar la brecha digital en temas de discapacidad, género y juventud, es importante aumentar el acceso a tecnologías digitales en el sector salud, incluyendo el acceso justo a servicios de salud sexual y reproductiva y en atención en casos en violencia basada en género. Para lograr esto, el diseño de regulaciones del espacio digital se debe construir en alianzas con organizaciones y redes de personas jóvenes con discapacidad, priorizando la protección de datos personales. Todas las nuevas tecnologías deben responder a las necesidades de las personas con discapacidad, en el sentido de la protección de nuestra privacidad a través de tecnologías de asistencia que promuevan nuestra autonomía y el respeto a nuestra dignidad personal. Como menciona el secretario general en su nota de políticas sobre participación juvenil significativa, la protección es un principio central en esta participación. Medidas de prevención y mecanismos de respuesta deben estar disponibles y ser accesibles para que las personas jóvenes estemos protegidas ante amenazas o ataques. Nuestra participación en espacios de toma de decisiones requiere tomar medidas que prevengan cualquier forma de acoso, maltrato y explotación y que existan mecanismos plenamente accesibles en caso de explotación y abusos sexuales contra personas jóvenes con discapacidad. La inclusión digital y el acceso igualitario a recursos culturales, educativos y científicos son necesarios para que las personas jóvenes con discapacidad aportemos activamente a nuestras sociedades en igualdad de condiciones. De hecho, en el marco de la Cumbre del Futuro con el Global Digital Compact, los estados se comprometen a aumentar la disponibilidad de plataformas tecnológicas y digitales, software y currículos educativos en distintos idiomas y lenguajes accesibles, para que todas las personas, incluyendo las personas con discapacidad, podamos ser parte de procesos para dirigir y diseñar programas de fortalecimiento de capacidades para mujeres, niñez, juventud, adultos mayores y personas con discapacidad, y tomar nuestras perspectivas en cuenta para el diseño e implementación de programas. Además, no hacer daño es una premisa fundamental para que las innovaciones tecnológicas sean libres de prejuicios y desigualdades. También las consultas son una herramienta central de participación juvenil significativa y contribuyen a entender las problemáticas que aquejan a las juventudes. Pero además de las consultas, las personas jóvenes con discapacidad debemos ser parte de espacios de toma de decisiones a nivel global y nacional. Otro reto que existe entre el establecimiento de acuerdos nacionales y su traducción efectiva en políticas y prácticas nacionales puede lograrse a través del desarrollo y aplicación de políticas y marcos regulatorios inclusivos, que desarrollen normas nacionales abordando específicamente los retos que enfrentamos las personas jóvenes con discapacidad para acceder a las tecnologías y utilizarlas. La actividad, la investigación y la labor sobre tecnologías de apoyo para personas con discapacidad deben fomentarse prestando especial atención a las personas que enfrentan formas múltiples o agravadas de discriminación. Es importante actualizar los marcos regulatorios para ajustarlos a los avances tecnológicos y promover la participación activa de las personas jóvenes con discapacidad en todos los procesos científicos de diseño de tecnologías de asistencia. Promover la participación de mujeres jóvenes con discapacidad en el campo de STEM es absolutamente necesario. Las personas jóvenes con discapacidad debemos ser parte integral del proceso de toma de decisiones sobre acceso a tecnologías de información y comunicación, contribuyendo como personas líderes y expertas en estos temas. Invertir en alfabetización digital para personas jóvenes con discapacidad es un componente clave, al igual que la adopción de los gobiernos de normas de accesibilidad universalmente aceptadas para facilitar la cooperación internacional y la transferencia de tecnología. Esto incluye adoptar y promover principios de diseño y accesibilidad universal en las normas y leyes y orientaciones nacionales, para garantizar que las tecnologías y los entornos sean accesibles para todas las personas. Creemos en la movilización de mecanismos de inversión y financiación en iniciativas tecnológicas que respondan a las necesidades de las personas jóvenes con discapacidad. Para que esto funcione, los mecanismos de financiación deben ser accesibles, incorporar un enfoque de juventud y género y ser transparentes y responsables. De hecho, el Pacto del Futuro incluye el compromiso de los estados en eliminar las barreras que impiden la participación significativa de las personas con discapacidad y además invertir en tecnologías de asistencia que promuevan nuestra participación plena y equitativa en la sociedad. En el pacto, los estados solicitan al secretario general desarrollar una propuesta de plataforma global de inversión juvenil para atraer y asegurar el mejoramiento de la financiación de programas de juventud a nivel nacional. Esta plataforma global debe incluir mecanismos accesibles de financiación que aseguren que las personas jóvenes con discapacidad tengamos acceso igualitario a mecanismos de inversión para nuestro trabajo y nuestras propias organizaciones. Como juventud con discapacidad tenemos el derecho y el potencial de contribuir significativamente a nuestras sociedades, asegurándonos de que las barreras del pasado no definan las oportunidades del presente y el futuro. Por todo esto, la construcción y el progreso de una sociedad inclusiva, accesible y equitativa es tarea de todos y todas. Espero que esta sea una de las muchas sesiones de COSP en la que las personas jóvenes con discapacidad como yo contribuyamos para avanzar en la agenda de igualdad. Muchas gracias.
Thank you so much, Ms. Carranza, for your insights. Ladies and gentlemen, I now invite our next panelist to take the floor. Ms. Hjördis Haraldsdóttir of the World Federation of the Deaf, Iceland. Ms. Hjördis Anna Haraldsdóttir was born in 1981 and raised in Iceland. She's passionate about social work, culture, and art. She believes that inclusion is crucial in society, striving for equal opportunities. With a strong sense of justice, she has dedicated almost 20 years to teaching children and sign language. Hjördis has worked extensively with various groups, including the elderly, disabled individuals, and refugees. As a board member of the World Federation of the Deaf since 2019, she emphasizes the importance of justice and humility in society. Hjördis believes that taking action and getting involved is the key to making a difference. I kindly invite Ms. Haraldsdóttir to deliver her presentation. You have the floor.
Thank you. The World Federation of the Deaf is an international, non-governmental organization representing and promoting 70 million deaf people's human rights worldwide. And this is including the right to sign language. Deaf people shall have access to information and communication in their national sign languages. And this is stipulated under Articles 9 and 21 of the UN CRPD. And this is including information and communications technologies and systems, as we know as ICT. So as we've seen, advances in this field have had a positive impact on deaf people's participation in society. They've had access to information. Deaf people use, as you can see, as we visual solutions. They've been able to capitalize on these visual solutions, such as videos, subtitles, and images, unable to communicate. We use it for deaf people use to text messaging and email. We use our smartphones with video conferencing technology. This has enabled us to connect to each other in our national sign languages, both with synchronous and asynchronous communication in our national sign languages and the provision of also remote sign language interpretation services. However, the deployment of these technologies is slowly advancing, unfortunately unevenly, and largely limited to high-income countries. So when looking at technological solutions, some of them rely on auditory signals alone, and this creates barriers. For example, in emergency situations, an auditory-based warning alerts and radio announcements exclude deaf people. And as you can imagine, this has had a grave impact in several ongoing conflicts around the world. For deaf people, they were not given real-time access to information on the incoming missile attacks in civil space. Different types of warnings they get much later, which have disastrous effects. And there exist technological solutions that are universally adequate. And they can be provided to any civilian, including deaf people. But public authorities and public authority services do not provide them. And this violates the principle of universal design for all under Article 2 of the UNCRPD. The WFD emphasizes the necessity for governments and private enterprises to consult with representative organizations of deaf people, and this is stipulated under Article 4.3 of the CRPD in regards to designing services and products that have an impact on the daily life of deaf people. And too often, we see the development of new technologies, such as sign language gloves, gloves that say that they can understand sign language, and they are praised for these innovations from the innovation sector. But they are no real use for the deaf people and the deaf community. The innovators and developers who have no prior experience or knowledge of deaf people's realities need to include deaf organizations. They have an in-depth understanding of deaf people's lives from the earliest stage. The WFD notes a huge gap between high-income countries and low and middle-income countries, LMICs. They notice the huge gap in regards to access of deaf people to their ICTs, and this must be reduced through international cooperation. And this you see in Article 32 of the CRPD. So current modern technology solutions often require access to electricity, power, to reliable and fast internet connection, including Wi-Fi and or to a high amount of data. And Since deaf people communicate in their national sign languages using sign language, this is a visual modality, so their use of ICT consists mostly of accessing to and sending of video files, which require data transfer. And this can be very costly for deaf peoples in LMICs, as of them, for dealing with electricity shortages, and cannot rely on a stable internet connection. And others cannot handle a fast internet connection, as 4G is not provided everywhere. Yeah. So these creates great disparities. And the WFD saw this during the COVID-19 pandemic, where the majority of interactions were virtual. So not everyone sat at the same table. Hence our urge to develop and promote the use of low tech, as we call that, and low data use. Those type of resources we want to ensure that deaf people have access to visual-based technologies. There are many different types of technologies, but we need to keep in mind visual-based technologies is what is accessible for the deaf community. Since the beginning of the armed conflict in Ukraine, deaf people did not have easy access to time-sensitive news and information that connected them to each other and or to their representative regional national organizations. However, UTOG, the Ukrainian Society of the Deaf, created a special telecommunications app. This app has been and is still used for both as a communication means and as an information channel, where information translated into and produced in Ukrainian Sign Language was shared with everyone, including deaf Ukrainian people displaced in other European countries. The WFD supports the Ukrainian Society of the Deaf to facilitate this process. And therefore, interpretations and translations of important information has been able to reach the deaf Ukrainian community. And thanks to the support of the WFD to the Ukrainian Society of the Deaf, this has also been possible. Moreover, the Ukrainian Society of the Deaf worked with Ukrainian authorities to develop a text-based system to communicate the anti-aircraft alerts, warning deaf people of impending danger and allowing them to seek safe shelter in time. In Israel, the Israeli Association of the Deaf has reported the use of smartwatches, by using smartwatches to let deaf people know and receive warnings with a vibratory alerts. And they were able to seek shelter in time through these type of vibratory alert systems. At the same time, the innovative solutions are not useful for deaf people in Gaza, as electricity shortages persist and access to the internet is not always available. And therefore, we need hence a current need felt by deaf people in Gaza to be provided adequate technology services to keep themselves safe from conflict is necessary. Since the development and deployment of these solutions take time, the huge delay puts deaf people in danger in times of armed conflict or possible natural disasters. Finally, with the surge of the artificial intelligence-led technologies, when looking at national sign languages, they have not been addressed sufficiently in their development, just until today. Especially in the field of language translation, where these innovations are in their early stages. Since there are more than, I need to let you know, worldwide, there are 200 national and indigenous sign languages used worldwide. So we need to ask ourselves, how would the development of AI technologies affect sign language? Will that affect sign languages worldwide when AI is so data dependent? While some of the countries in the global north have the resources to develop such solutions for their national sign languages, what about the other global north countries that are from smaller sized countries and those from the global south that do not have that ability, both in terms of knowledge and resources? So as we go forward with AI, we need to consider these factors as well. Will it affect the number of sign languages in the world in the future? Something else I would like to address in regards to AI is that we would like to address the knowledge sharing used by AI. But what database does AI look for to create information? Does the AI use the information produced by the majority? Or does it also take into account the specific information produced by some groups or individuals with their own expertise? And we need to wonder, which perspective will they be considering, the medical perspective or the human rights perspective? And how will the AI collect the information that it shares with the users? Where are the limits? How can we prevent false information or stories from being, as we call, whitewashed? To conclude, we, the World Federation of the Deaf, strongly urge the design process of new ICT to take into account the needs of every deaf person, every disabled person, also in the Global South, following the principles of inclusive and universal design for all. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Harold's-daughter, for your excellent presentation. Dear delegates, civil society friends, I once again would like to thank all of our panelists for sharing their knowledge and experiences with us today. I will now hand over the co-chairmanship back to Ambassador Gunaratna, Vice President of the conference, who will now continue to moderate our meeting. Ambassador?
Thank you, Dr. Murray. Distinguished delegates, let's now move to the second phase of this roundtable, that is the interactive discussion between the panelists, delegates, and participants. As announced at the outset of this meeting, in this segment, there will be an opportunity for delegations and other observers to request the floor, to either pose specific questions to the panelists or to make brief comments relevant to the discussion. For this purpose, delegates and other participants may press the button at their desk to request the floor. All interested delegations and accredited observers from UN entities and national human rights institutions are also able to inscribe. On a first-come, first-served basis, we will call and give the floor to the first 5 inscribed government delegations whose microphones shall be unmuted when they are given the floor. In order to ensure the discussion is inclusive and following the decisions of the Bureau, after every 5 states parties, we will invite 1 NGO, 1 UN entity, and 1 national human rights institution to take the floor. When you are given the floor, please first identify yourself and the title of the delegation or organization you are representing. Please either pose specific questions to the panel or share your brief comments relevant to the discussion. Please refrain from reading prepared statements. All interventions must be no longer than 2 minutes with no exceptions. I will count on everybody for your cooperation to adhere to this limit in the interest of time. The floor is now open for inscriptions. You may press the button on your desk. Okay. I recognize the first speaker for today, the delegation of Hungary. You have the floor, sir. The delegation of Hungary, you have the floor, sir.
First of all, thank you for providing this opportunity today. Disability as a notion and human rights issue will be, I think, reconsidered when it comes to technological advancement. When talking about disability as a concept, we have to think about the evolution of wearable devices, hearing aids, and exoskeletons included. In today's world, artificial devices and materials are becoming more and more important segment of our lives. And the main question will be what barriers we are going to face in terms of privacy, access to networks, interoperability, as well as affordability of these devices. This will be especially true as the rapid development of the so-called immersive devices, for example, cochlear implants for the hearing impaired persons, including the brain-computer interface, will bring about much greater, not only great opportunities, but also possible serious and harmful risk. In addition, important aspects such as the integrity of individuals, individual and community autonomy, as well as responsibility for or immunity for own acts, for example, malicious and unlawful interference, must also be paying attention to this area in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for your question. I now recognize the distinguished representative, His Excellency, the Ambassador of Sri Lanka. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Chair, for giving me the floor. I thank the panelists for their presentations, which provided valuable insight into the approaches to strengthen international cooperation mechanisms to promote inclusivity in technology innovations and transfer in the context of disability management. Chair, it is, however, a fact that many countries continue to struggle to bridge the digital divide. International cooperation at the government-to-government level remains crucial. However, it is also a fact that the private sector of a country, especially the mobile service providers and those in the IT industry, experience quantum leaps in ICT, have an important role to play since most of the innovation takes place in that sector. It is also a fact that persons with disabilities are less likely to possess a smart device and therefore may not be able to utilize the assistive technologies modern smartphones can provide easily and inexpensively. Now, against this backdrop, my delegation would like to have a response from our panelists as to what steps they might recommend to be taken to engage the private sector and to encourage the private sector in promoting international cooperation and as an enabler of the much required technology transfer for innovation and inclusion for the common good of the disabled that forms at any given time a significant proportion of humanity, and whether the UNO can do more to facilitate that process. Thank you.
I thank the Ambassador of Sri Lanka. The next request for the floor is from the distinguished delegate of Mexico. You have the floor.
Muchas gracias, señor copresidente. El avance tecnológico tiene el potencial de transformar la vida de las personas con discapacidad. Sin embargo, para que estas innovaciones sean verdaderamente inclusivas, es fundamental que la cooperación internacional se fortalezca y se oriente hacia la creación de tecnologías accesibles y equitativas. Por ello, es crucial desarrollar y aplicar políticas y marcos regulatorios que promuevan la inclusión. Las tecnologías emergentes, como la inteligencia artificial, presentan oportunidades únicas para mejorar la vida de las personas con discapacidad. No obstante, es vital que estos desarrollos se diseñen teniendo en cuenta sus necesidades específicas desde el inicio. México aboga por la adopción de normas internacionales que promuevan la accesibilidad y el diseño universal y que garanticen la participación activa de las personas con discapacidad en todas las fases de los procesos de innovación tecnológica. En segundo lugar, la cooperación internacional debe enfocarse en la creación de capacidades y en la transferencia de conocimientos, especialmente hacia países en desarrollo. Asimismo, es crucial movilizar recursos e inversiones para iniciativas tecnológicas inclusivas. Los organismos multilaterales, donantes y el sector privado deben colaborar para apoyar proyectos que promuevan la inclusión digital y la accesibilidad, asegurando que las tecnologías sean asequibles, accesibles y sujetas a un marco regulatorio ético que promueva los derechos humanos y garantice la inclusión de todas las personas con discapacidad. Para finalizar, planteo una pregunta para nuestros panelistas. ¿Qué estrategias pueden adoptar los países para asegurar que las tecnologías emergentes, como la inteligencia artificial, no solo sean accesibles, sino también seguras y respetuosas de la privacidad y la dignidad de las personas con discapacidad? Muchas gracias.
I thank the distinguished delegate of Mexico, and I now hand over the floor to the distinguished delegate of Turkey. You have the floor.
Thank you, Chairman. At the beginning, I would like to thank to all panelists for their valuable contributions. As it is the highly underlined, inclusive technological innovation is essential to access information, services, and products for independent living. Regardlessly, Turkey attaches great importance to cooperation with the public and private sector, civil society organizations, universities, and international organizations to promote inclusive, sustainable, and personalized technologies innovations. In this respect, measures to raise funding for research and development studies to establish a financing system to access affordable assistive technologies, to provide these technologies in workplaces, to strengthen and monitor the accessibility of ICTs have been envisaged by the National Action Plan on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities covering 2023-2025. In order to put these measures into action, awareness-raising activities and technical training such as web accessibility standards and accessibility of social media are organized for technical staff of public institutions, universities, and local governments. Additionally, a legislative regulation on digital accessibility has been drafted. I should have to underscore the crucial role of international cooperation, collaboration, and sharing experience in the development and transfer of innovative technologies for Turkey and for all countries as well. Let's together remove barriers with technological innovation for the barrier-free world. Thank you for your attention.
I thank the distinguished delegate of Turkey. I now pass on the floor to the distinguished delegate of Singapore.
Okay. Thank you to the chair and the panel for the rich sharing. My name is Joshua. I'm a digital accessibility specialist and delegate from Singapore. So quite a rare breed as shared by Mr. Constantino on the panel for digital accessibility specialists. Now in Singapore, we've made some strides in terms of accessibility and inclusion for people with disabilities using technology, but we also have some gaps. So for example, in Singapore, we subsidize the acquisition of assistive technologies for persons with disabilities and also provide training programs and consultative services so people with disabilities not only have the tools, but also the skills to use these tools effectively. We are also expanding the reach of government digital services to reduce barriers, for example, through the formation of an accessibility enabling team. And one of their objectives is to increase the accessibility of government websites. For example, today, over 70% of government high-traffic digital services are considered accessible, and the goal is to reach 100% by 2030. So my question to the panel is this: in order to facilitate the innovation and adoption of accessible technologies, we have to include the private sector. So how can we provide greater incentives to the private sector and also increase the amount of education to developers who are building these accessible technologies? Thank you.
I thank the distinguished delegate from Singapore. I now hand over the floor to the UN Office for Project Services. You have the floor.
Thank you, Your Excellency. My name is Pascal Bielefeld. I'm the CEO of AT-Scale, the Global Partnership for Assistive Technology, hosted by UNOPS. I wanted to just make a comment. We're all about strengthening the system to increase access to assistive technology, but also looking at market shaping opportunities to make that access much more sustainable. And we're really seeing major market failures, especially in low and middle income countries, whereby the supply and the demand really don't meet due to the very high costs often of assistive technology and the lack of access. And we heard from the Deputy Secretary General yesterday about the high concentration of manufacturing of assistive technology today in just a handful of countries. And so we believe that there's a real opportunity for a meaningful public-private partnership to support tech transfers and greater local production. This would entail manufacturers being willing to sell at a lower cost against, for example, volume guarantees and a conducive environment. For example, reducing taxes by host governments that would be hosting this manufacturing hubs. So I wanted to put that out there. AT-Scale is ready to be a catalytic partner in these efforts and to work with interested parties along those lines. Thank you.
I thank the UN Office for Project Services, and I now hand over the floor to the delegation from the European Union.
Thank you, Mr. President. The accelerated development of technology offers incredible opportunities to society in general and to persons with disabilities in particular. Technology can be used to design on-site and remote solutions tailored to the needs of persons with disabilities. A precondition for the effective use of this technology is, of course, accessibility. EU as legislation such as the European Accessibility Act and the European standards ensure accessibility of products and digital services, as well as interoperability with assistive technology by requiring products such as computers, smartphones, e-commerce services, and so forth to be accessible for persons with disabilities. By 2030, the EU objective is to ensure that the democratic life and public services online will be fully accessible for everyone, including persons with disabilities. Moreover, a part of the European strategy of the rights of persons with disabilities, the EU-funded Resource Center, Accessible EU, offers to support for the implementation of accessible legislation. So my question is, persons with disabilities need personalized assistive technologies that are flexible and accompanied by support services linked to accessible solutions. What are the panel thoughts on how to ensure well-functioning markets, including international markets, of assistive and accessible technologies to deliver fit-to-purpose solutions for the benefits of persons with disabilities? Thank you for your attention.
I thank the delegate from the European Union. I now invite the civil society organization GDI Hub to take the floor. You have the floor, sir.
To the chair. My name is Anna Landry, and I am a wheelchair user conducting research at the Global Disability Innovation Hub. We at GDI Hub see every day how assistive technologies are developing quickly in the global north, but often fail to transfer to the vast majority of disabled people around the world. This is despite the fact that the need for items like wheelchairs, hearing aids, and ventilators is an urgent matter of justice. So we conduct research on what works to deliver AT to those who need it, particularly in low-resource contexts. What we've found is that we must stop the trend of overwhelmingly designing high-tech in high-income countries and pivot to listen and support users of assistive technology in low-resource settings. GDI Hub has worked with more than 100 partners in 40 countries to successfully gather evidence, design tools, and strengthen the public sector systems needed to support real change in this sector. So we call on member states and civil society organizations to join us as partners in addressing the need for life-changing AT in the low-resource context where it is needed most, especially in humanitarian crises like those in Gaza, Ukraine, and beyond. Particularly in these spaces, having access to a proper piece of mobility, sensory, or other aid can determine the difference between survival and death. Our work recently has even included testing market-shaping techniques, such as putting the first hearing aid in the UNICEF catalog. We also call on member states to mobilize to increase access to AT in close partnership with organizations of people with disabilities. In my research, I myself am spearheading the creation of a global directory of OPDs, with approximately 2,500 collected so far. Please get in touch if this resource would be helpful for you. Assistive technology is vital to the disability community, but even in the year 2024, levels of access range from as low as 3% in some countries. AT not only enables activities of daily living for disabled people like me, but is a vehicle to justice. Rather than being an afterthought for governments and aid organizations, assistive tech must be urgently prioritized as a basic human right. At GDI Hub, we know what works, and we welcome all who wish to partner with us in service of a fairer world. Thank you.
I thank the delegate from GDI Hub for her statement, and I now invite the delegate from Namibia to take the floor.
Thank you very much, Chair. My name is Alexia Manompe-Ncube. I'm a Deputy Minister in the Presidency in Namibia. My question is more on the Article 19 on independent living. The theme is already telling us on the rethinking the disability inclusion. So in order for us to include people with disabilities in the society, perhaps you could tell us how you have worked on this one in order to implement the Article 19 in your societies. And Namibia as a country, we already developed also a national action plan on persons with albinism to access their rights to health and early childhood development, as well as economic empowerment. On another one is that the deaf people, we introduce a motion in Parliament that will recognize the language as one of the 12 national languages in Namibia. So this, for us, it's in order to leave the Article 19 as well as also the current theme, which is rethinking disability inclusion. Thank you very much.
I thank Your Excellency, the Deputy Minister of Namibia for her statement. I now invite the delegate from Guyana to take the floor.
Thank you very much, Chair. Ganesh Singh. As the world becomes more digitally and technologically advanced, persons with disabilities are benefiting from these advancements. More persons are accessing jobs, educational opportunities, and living independent lives. In Guyana, we've seen the positive impact on technology and digital connectivity on the lives of persons with disabilities, including indigenous peoples with disabilities. Now we have more persons with disabilities that are accessing educational and training opportunities. This has been done with the provisions of devices to facilitate virtual learning or digital learning. Additionally, more persons with disabilities are now employed using technology to perform their duties. However, there are still significant gaps in Guyana being a developing country. We do recognize that international partnerships and cooperation can facilitate the tech innovation and transfer, and also ensure that there is equity when it comes to access of technology to enhance the lives of persons with disabilities. My question is, how can developing countries like Guyana, that is very small with a population of 750,000, have a more equitable access to these assistive technology that can enhance the lives of persons with disabilities? Thank you.
I thank the delegate of Guyana and now hand over the floor to the delegate from Egypt.
Thank you. My name is Iman Karim. I am the President of the Council of Persons with Disabilities. كفلت قانون رقم 10 لسنة 2018 بشأن حقوق الأشخاص ذوي الإعاقة حق الأشخاص ذوي الإعاقة في توفير سبل الإتاحة المختلفة والتي تتمثل بالتجهيزات والإجراءات اللازمة للوصول إلى بيئة دامجة وموائمة فيزيقياً ومجتمعياً ومعلوماتياً. وقد قامت مصر بإصدار قانون حقوق الملكية الفكرية، وأيضاً بصدور هذا القانون تم إطلاق الاستراتيجية الوطنية للملكية الفكرية 2022-2027 في سبتمبر 2022، والذي يتضمن محورين هامين هما تفعيل المردود الاقتصادي للملكية الفكرية في تحقيق أهداف التنمية المستدامة وزيادة التوعية بالملكية الفكرية في المجتمع المصري. وهناك جهود وطنية كبيرة في التمكين الأشخاص ذوي الإعاقة، وهي تطوير البرمجيات وتطبيقات الهاتف المحمول لتمكين الأشخاص ذوي الإعاقة. كما تسعى مصر إلى إنشاء سوق معلومات جديد لخدمة أكثر من 15 مليون مواطن مصري و55 مليون مواطن عربي من الأشخاص ذوي الإعاقة. كما تقدم الدعم الفني والمالي للأفكار المبتكرة لتحويلها إلى منتجات تخدم الأشخاص ذوي الإعاقة، وقد تم تطوير ما يقرب من 300 تقنية جديدة. تم إنشاء الأكاديمية الوطنية لتكنولوجيا المعلومات للأشخاص ذوي الإعاقة، كما تم إنشاء المركز التقني لخدمات الأشخاص ذوي الإعاقة. توفير حلول تكنولوجية متكاملة لتمكين الأشخاص ذوي الإعاقة السمعية من خلال التواصل هاتفياً مع خدمات الطوارئ في خلال تطبيق واصل، وإتاحة عدد من المواقع الحكومية لاستخدام الأشخاص ذوي الإعاقة وتقديم الدعم التكنولوجي بالأجهزة والتطبيقات التكنولوجية المساعدة المتخصصة لمدارس الصم والتربية الفكرية والدمج. تم تدريب أكثر من 3000 معلم بتلك المدارس لرفع كفاءة التعليم، وإنشاء الشبكة القومية لخدمات الأشخاص ذوي الإعاقة تأهيل لإتاحة فرص أفضل للتطوير الوظيفي في إطار تنفيذ مشروع وظائف ومهارات، والذي يتم بتنفيذه بالتعاون مع برنامج الإنمائي للأمم المتحدة ومنظمة العمل الدولية لتوفير وظائف لائقة. كما تم إصدار مؤتمر مبادرون تحت شعار الأدوات والتقنيات المساعدة للأشخاص ذوي الإعاقة، وهو أول مؤتمر مصري عربي تفاعلي تشاركي يسلط الضوء على قضية الأشخاص ذوي الإعاقة في الشرق الأوسط وأفريقيا. تم عقد المؤتمر العالمي لمنظمي الاتصالات سنة 2023 في شرم الشيخ، وهو أحد وكالات الأمم المتحدة المتخصصة في مجال التكنولوجيا المعلومات، بهدف تبادل المعارف والخبرات وتجارب الدول في ذلك المجال. وتعاون المجلس القومي للأشخاص ذوي الإعاقة مع الوكالة اليابانية للتعاون الدولي جايكا والأكاديمية الوطنية لتكنولوجيا الأشخاص ذوي الإعاقة، وذلك والعديد من الجامعات المصرية، وذلك لاستخدام تقنية النظام الرقمي ديزي للمعلومات المتاحة لتحسين إمكانية وصولهم إلى المعلومات. بالرغم من كل الجهود المبذولة إلا أن هناك تحديات كبيرة، ويجب أن يكون هناك تفعيل لتعزيز التعاون الدولي وبناء الشراكات في المجالات الآتية. وتوصي مصر بتقليل الفجوة الرقمية والتكنولوجية، كذلك توصي بتطوير واتساق معايير تصميم وتنفيذ التكنولوجيا المساعدة لتتفق مع القوانين والأطر والمعايير والمواصفات العالمية. تسعى مصر للتعاون الدولي في الاستثمارات في مجالات تطوير البنية التحتية
I thank the distinguished delegate of Egypt.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let me now invite the delegation of Iraq to take the floor.
شكرا. وأنا رئيس هيئة حقوق ذوي الإعاقة والاحتياجات الخاصة في وزارة العمل والشؤون الاجتماعية. نسعى إلى تعزيز التعاون الدولي في مجال الابتكارات والتكنولوجيا بما يسهم بتذليل العقبات التي تواجه المعاقين في حياتهم اليومية والرغبة في توظيف تلك التكنولوجيا نحو حياة آمنة وكريمة، وتوثيق تلك الأطر من خلال العمل المشترك وتبادل الخبرات للعاملين في مجال الإعاقة، إضافة إلى تبني الاختراعات التكنولوجية التي تسهم في الوصول إلى الخدمات والبرامج كافة، ومن أهمها برامج الخاصة بالقراءة الصوتية، فضلاً عن التطبيقات الذكية مثل تطبيقات الخرائط التي توفر المعلومات للوصول إلى المباني والتطبيقات الصوتية، واستثمار تلك التقنيات في عملية الإدماج في المجتمع للوصول إلى المعلومات والخدمات بسهولة، وفي التفاعل مع الآخرين بطريقة مبتكرة مما تزيد فرصهم للمشاركة الفعالة في الحياة اليومية وسوق العمل. نتطلع إلى زيادة هذا التعاون مع المجتمع الدولي. شكراً لكم.
I thank the delegation of Iraq. I now hand over the floor to the delegate from Argentina.
Muchas gracias, señor presidente. En primer lugar, mi delegación desea felicitar a los panelistas por sus excelentes intervenciones, sumamente informativas. Y la pregunta de mi delegación es para la señorita María José Carranza. ¿Qué expectativas tienen los jóvenes con discapacidad respecto del Pacto del Futuro y de los resultados de la Cumbre del Futuro? Muchas gracias, señor presidente.
Thank you for your very concise question. I now hand over the floor to G3ICT. G3ICT, you have the floor.
Thank you, Excellency. As we are all looking forward to the Summit of the Future, G3ICT would like to draw the attention of the country delegations that the drafting of the Pact for the Future should ensure that digital innovations and the implementation of digital technologies, products, and services are inclusive of persons with disabilities and older persons. The Pact for the Future should include commitments by states parties and technology companies to ensure that future digital products and services are available, affordable, and accessible for persons with disabilities and older persons. Such objectives are embedded in Article 9 of the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities on Accessibility and other related articles on identifying accessibility and reasonable accommodation in multiple application areas. To the extent that the Summit of the Future will reaffirm the importance of human rights, the CRPD should be referenced and serve as a fundamental framework for fulfilling these recommendations. Since its inception in 2006, G3ICT has facilitated global multi-stakeholder cooperation and created education and professional digital programs, development programs in collaboration with disability organizations, the technology industry, regulators, academia, and accessibility professionals in matters of digital accessibility and inclusion. An important body of knowledge, good practices, and policy experiences is globally available that can provide factual, evidence-based guidance for
Thank you, G3ICT. I now give the floor to the delegate from the Lao PDR. Lao PDR, you have the floor.
Hello. Sorry. Mr. Chair, thank you very much for excellent presentation from panelists. I would like to share before asking the question. So first, the Lao PDR, we also cooperate between government and international cooperation and also the organization for persons with disabilities to develop some of the programs like a textbooks, easy read, easy talk, audio books for persons with visual impairment, and hand-me-hand talk for persons with disabilities. However, we are still facing many challenges like budgeting and also human resources. Apart from that, we also have some difficulties like in rural areas, particularly in the technology infrastructure, and also the financial difficulties for the families with disability, for the person with disabilities. So let me ask the panelists that what is the main priorities if the country is facing like this to start with? Thank you.
Thank you for your question, Lao PDR. I now give the floor to the delegate from Brazil.
Buenas tardes. Gracias, señor presidente. Yo soy persona cega, soy coordinador general de tecnología asistiva del Ministerio de Ciencia, Tecnología e Innovación del gobierno brasileño. Mi asistente, Ana Lúcia, irá transmitir nuestro cuestionamiento a los panelistas sobre la tecnología asistiva y transferencia de tecnología.
In Brazil, we have a national plan of assistive technology. One of the pillars of these plans deals with research, development, and innovation in assistive technology. Another pillar is the promotion of access to assistive technology. We are very interested in knowing initiatives from other countries in these fields. And we would like the panelists to give their opinion on the potential of assistive technology based in artificial intelligence to promote access to education and labor for people with disabilities. Thank you.
Thank you, Brazil. Now give the floor to the delegate from Malta.
Thank you. Thank you for this. I am Elvira. I am a representative of Agencia Support, the national service provider for persons with disability. And locally in Malta, we have tackled technology through a number of ways, be it at a national level and at an EU level, through conferences, schemes and subsidies for families and private entities. And we also have the access to the Communication and Technology Unit, which assesses children from a very young age to identify the best communication devices and technology devices which assist them in their day-to-day living. So my question for the family is, we do have subsidies for the families to make procurement easier of the devices, but then how do we get the stakeholders in the lives of persons with disability on board and normalizing the use of inclusive assistive technology in all spaces of everyday life, be it schools, be it employment, and being even in the healthcare settings? How do we get everyone on board to make sure that assistive technology is a part of daily life as well? Thank you.
Thank you, Malta. I will now hand over the floor to El Salvador, who will be the last delegation to pose a question. I'm sorry I cannot accommodate everyone who have asked for the floor, simply because of the paucity of time, and I have to give the floor to the panelists to respond as well. So I hand over the floor to El Salvador to pose your question. Thank you.
Muchísimas gracias, señor presidente. Nada más hacer un breve comentario sobre la experiencia exitosa que tenemos desde el gobierno de El Salvador en la implementación de la transferencia de tecnología y entrega de dispositivos accesibles para niñez y adolescencia con discapacidad, iniciando desde la garantía del acceso a la educación inclusiva, cumpliendo con nuestra Ley Especial de Inclusión, la Ley Crecer Juntos, nuestro plan estratégico Eliminando Barreras. También comentar que con la ratificación del Tratado de Marrakech estamos trabajando con el Ministerio de Cultura, Ministerio de Educación y también el Centro Nacional de Registros a través de la Dirección de Propiedad Intelectual para garantizar la accesibilidad a acervo bibliográfico para las personas con discapacidad visual, que se encontrará disponible de acceso gratuito a todos los usuarios en la recién inaugurada Biblioteca Nacional de El Salvador, gracias a la donación del gobierno de China. Muchísimas gracias por el espacio.
Thank you, El Salvador. Ladies and gentlemen, many thanks for your interesting comments and the questions posed to the panel. I will now turn to our distinguished panelists to provide their responses and share their thoughts on the questions raised and comments made. We would kindly ask each panelist to limit their response to approximately 3 minutes. Let's begin with Mr. Konstantinos Stefanidis. Mr. Stefanidis, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. We have a very rich spectrum of questions, comments, and position statements. In response, let me start by iterating my concluding remark. In order to move forward, we need international cooperation, and this is a prerequisite for success, because globalized challenges required global solutions. Then we need to address the issue of digital divide. This is not a new issue. 3.5 decades ago, systematic work has started in this direction, and in particular, it was thought as necessary not only the engagement of the public sector, but also the private sector. And joint research and development activities, legislation and standardization were 3 parallel roads that have been followed in order to address the issue. Growing market, as it was perceived, and now this is more the case, was an incentive for engaging the private sector. At the same time, the issue of affordability of technological solutions is today as vital as it was then. And appropriate policies need to be in place in order to ensure that this is the case, not only within one nation, but this has been addressed more systematically in the global north. Now it needs to be tackled for the global south, and perhaps the global north needs to consider policies to help the global south. What we see today is a gap between policy, existing legislation, and practice. And the reasons have been identified. Let me remind you of some of those I had identified in the past and today. Lack of university curricula to educate software developments. The new generation of tools is necessary to streamline the implementation, evaluation, and validation of the situation, iteratively with experts and end users participating in a human-centered process. In addressing the artificial intelligence technologies which are emerging, of course, we need to avoid discrimination. So the data used to train AI models need to be carefully addressed. Algorithms used to process the data need to be seen very carefully. We need to take into consideration privacy and security issues. We need to see how the opportunities presented by AI technologies are not only presenting risks, but risks are avoided and opportunities are taken. The issue of personalized solutions with the emergence of AI technologies comes closer to fruition. In the past, we were talking about adaptability and adaptivity, but now these can be inherently addressed through the emerging AI solutions. Existing universal access and design for all policies need to be revisited, and this can be done by considering artificial intelligence solutions which are embedding universal access policies and technologies. So I think all in all, it is universal access, human-centered AI will give us a direction towards human-centered, universally designed artificial intelligence as a way forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stefanidis. I now hand over the floor to Mr. Mamadou Lamine Fati to share his response.
Alors, merci beaucoup. Je voudrais donc féliciter et remercier toutes les personnes qui ont eu à prendre la parole pour faire des contributions, mais également poser des questions. Et je pense que les panélistes qui sont autour de la table vont répondre en fonction de leur expertise aux différentes questions. Je voudrais également, je voudrais mettre l'accent sur une question formulée par son Excellence, Madame la représentante de la Namibie, qui a fait allusion à l'article 19 de la Convention. Elle demande quelle est la méthodologie que les États peuvent développer pour promouvoir la vie autonome, indépendante des personnes handicapées. Et à ce niveau-là, je voudrais donner une réponse qui va mettre l'accent sur 3 grands leviers pour promouvoir l'autonomie des personnes handicapées. Donc, le premier levier est relatif à la maîtrise des données, parce qu'on ne peut pas mettre en œuvre un projet de développement sans maîtriser fondamentalement la population cible des personnes handicapées et avoir des données donc désagrégées et ventilées. Et c'est pourquoi d'ailleurs dans ma communication au Sénégal, on a mis l'accent sur une carte d'égalité des chances qui a une fonction d'identification des personnes handicapées. Donc suite à la maîtrise des données, le deuxième levier sur lequel il va falloir agir, c'est donc naturellement l'élaboration d'un programme de développement inclusif adossé à un cadre de performance qui sera évalué périodiquement. Donc beaucoup d'États ici dans les interventions ont parlé de plan d'action. Ça veut dire que donc il y a des initiatives intéressantes au niveau des États. Le troisième levier, à mon sens, sur lequel il va falloir agir, c'est la coopération technique au niveau international. Fondamentalement, dans les débats, on a vu que les États n'ont pas les mêmes niveaux de développement. Et pour illustrer, donner l'exemple de mon pays, le Sénégal, je voudrais donc souligner quand même dans le domaine des technologies d'assistance une coopération existante avec ATScale, qui a démarré depuis l'année dernière et qui va se poursuivre sur 3 ans. Le BIT également, le FUNIAP et l'Union africaine ont eu à accompagner le programme de la carte d'égalité des chances. Donc nous pensons que fondamentalement la coopération va aider à améliorer les conditions de vie des personnes handicapées. Donc je voudrais m'en tenir là, tout en restant ouvert à des contacts ultérieurs pour approfondir la question. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you, Mr. Mamadou Lamine Fati, for your insights. I now pass on the floor to Ms. Maria Jose Carranza for her remarks.
Muchas gracias a cada uno y cada una de ustedes por sus preguntas. Quisiera iniciar esta breve intervención respondiendo a la pregunta directa de Argentina sobre las expectativas de la Cumbre del Futuro. Sin duda alguna, esto se resume a que la Cumbre del Futuro sea una herramienta de empoderamiento para las personas con discapacidad, pero también una garantía que asegure la cooperación internacional para generar avances en tecnología, avances en cultura, avances que permitan que las personas con discapacidad seamos dignificados y tratados en primer lugar como personas. Avances en donde las juventudes seamos el centro de las acciones, pero seamos también actores primordiales de esto. Y con ello quiero referirme al resto de las preguntas que ustedes nos hicieron como panel, y es que la base de todo esto es la educación, es la información, pero es también recordar la premisa de Naciones Unidas. Nada de nosotros sin nosotros. Y es así como las personas con discapacidad en general y como las juventudes debemos ser actores y debemos involucrarnos en todo momento y en cada una de las acciones que se tomen por y para nosotros. Esto se puede dar a través de consultas, a través de la dirección de recursos para asegurar la participación activa y efectiva de la juventud y de la discapacidad en general en espacios de incidencia y construcción de políticas que permitan que nuestras voces sean escuchadas, que nuestras necesidades sean reconocidas y que de esa manera los estados, los países y la cooperación internacional sea un aliado para construir un mundo accesible para todos y todas. Es así como a través de la educación podemos generar espacios de información que empoderen a las personas con discapacidad en primer lugar sobre nuestros derechos, sobre cómo ser agentes de cambio y cómo a través de nuestras acciones podemos generar esos espacios que necesitamos para construir un mundo en donde se reconozca nuestra dignidad como personas, en donde se reconozcan nuestras necesidades y que éstas puedan ser correctamente cubiertas por los estados. Y es ahí donde la tecnología juega un rol fundamental, porque es el aliado primordial para garantizar accesibilidad que sea asequible para todas las personas. Y es ahí donde la inversión puede centrarse en alfabetización digital para personas con discapacidad, sin dejar atrás a las mujeres, que generalmente son marginalizadas por el hecho de tener una vulnerabilidad múltiple, al hecho de ser mujeres, personas con discapacidad, y además estar en contextos en donde la educación hoy día no es un privilegio para todos y todas. Es así como el rol primordial de la educación es ser un agente para abrir puertas y generar oportunidades en igualdad de condiciones para todos y todas. Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Ms. Maria Jose Carranza. I now hand over the floor to Ms. Yodis Haraldsdottir to share her insights with you.
Thank you. I would like to share my concluding remarks, and I'd like to respond to Mexico's intervention. You had a very good question in regards to AI. Globally, looking at deaf organizations, working with the technological sector, we see that the technological sector would like to develop within AI, but we see that the deaf community has the expertise, and they need to be involved from the very beginning. We notice often they are simply an add-on once the project is finished, and then they ask for their evaluation. But that is not taking advantage of the expertise that they have. So the best is to have them from the start of any project, and that is one huge tip that we'd like to give everyone here today. And looking at universal design, that is always best. For all people with disabilities, and looking at the deaf community, when we see that there are technological developments, once universal design is implemented, then it benefits everyone. If we look at the smartphone, we have been using video conferencing from day one. And that's actually a better financial standpoint as well, because then the technology becomes affordable for everyone, instead of people with disabilities needing to buy separate devices. If we look at the principle of universal design from the beginning, then all of the accessibility features is available for all. And when looking at ICT, we need to make sure that everyone is included, both from the global north and the global south. And when looking at artificial intelligence, yes, there are many great advancements, and it will bring us a lot. However, we must be very mindful that we are responsible. That when we develop AI, we have to look at what the risks are and who we will marginalize. We also have to look 10 steps ahead. And maybe we need to think about what type of controls we can set in place on an international level. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Harals Jotir, for your response. May I now hand over the floor to my fellow co-chair, Dr. Murray, for his final remarks.
Thank you, co-chair. Oh, thank you, co-chair. As we see from this panel, we are at an exciting moment in time for our global societies, with technology change, including AI, promising to improve the lives of billions of people around the world. And as our panelist from Greece reminds us, that first of all, we need to ensure that we have created an inclusive present, fostering by leveraging the knowledge and results germinated over the past decades. And as our panelist from Senegal has noted, the potential of technology to foster inclusion with a disability card linked to databases able to provide and enhance services for people with disabilities. So clearly, technology has much potential. But as our panelists have reminded us, development must proceed in an inclusive manner with universal design principles always foremost. Our panelists from the WFD emphasized the need to ensure technology development is actually useful for the communities it serves. I would like to share some thoughts with you on another moment in time where technology change took place, but people were left behind. The invention of the telephone transformed societies, but left deaf people locked out of many aspects of life, including employment. So only in the past decades has society re-enabled full telecommunication access via video relay interpreting services. However, even today, this coverage is still not universal. This is a tremendous loss of human and economic potential. So this is a lesson our panelists also remind us of. Our panelists from the UN Youth reminds us it is essential that we bolster collaboration between governments, the private sector, NGOs, and civil society. We must do this so that we can share knowledge, resources, and technologies that actually can transform lives. Our panelists from the UN Youth also reminds us that we must include youth and women in these conversations. This is an important reminder not only for state parties and private entities, but also for CSOs to ensure that they also give space to youth and to the marginalized members of their communities to ensure that they bring our knowledge and perspective to the table. Ultimately, technological change requires a human component. It requires governments and private enterprises to consult with representative organizations of PWDs, and that we see that under Article 4.3 of the CRPD, when designing services and products that have an impact on our lives. What incentives are there for private businesses to include PWDs? Persons with disabilities are the world's largest minority group, 1 billion strong. And a design that takes into account our needs is truly designed for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Murray. Before we conclude, let me try to summarize the discussion with the help of the Secretariat. This roundtable drew attention to the technological and digital divides that affect persons with disabilities, the divide between persons with and without disabilities, and the divide between developed and developing countries. The many examples we heard from our panelists and participants made it clear persons with disabilities have lower access to technology. Technology is not always accessible to them, and they do not always have access to the assistive technology they need for independent living and inclusion in society. Women with disabilities have even lower access. Compounding this divide is the technological and digital divide between developing and developed countries. The technology as well as the electricity and internet needed to operate the technology are not always reliable and not always available in developing countries. And for many persons with disabilities in developing countries, they are not affordable. Many panelists and participants called for enhanced international cooperation to address these challenges, including by promoting technology transfer, partnerships with the private sector, capacity building, and local production of technology in developing countries. This would also help bring down the costs and make technology more affordable in these countries. Assigning budgets to assistive technology was also mentioned as a crucial step to promote access to this technology. This roundtable also stressed the need to use the principles of universal design in technology and to involve persons with disabilities in the production of persons with disabilities, both by participating as expert scientists and software developers, as well as by providing feedback as users of these systems. And this roundtable called for regulations for technology and artificial intelligence, to regulate accessibility requirements, to ensure the protection of personal information of persons with disabilities, and to eliminate discrimination and abuse. Moreover, the roundtable also called for investing in digital literacy of persons with disabilities. It was encouraging to hear about flagship innovations such as digital cards to support access to essential services for persons with disabilities, the provision of early warnings to persons with disabilities in various accessible formats such as SMS, sign language, and vibration warnings, and technological tools to support the education of indigenous persons with disabilities. Thank you all for sharing these and other concrete solutions. These types of initiatives are key to promote technology innovations and transfer for an inclusive future. On behalf of Dr. Murray, my fellow co-chair, I would like to thank all of our distinguished panelists of this roundtable and all delegates and participants from civil society and the United Nations system for your valuable contributions that enrich the discussion of our roundtable on the urgent issue of international cooperation to promote technology innovations and transfer for an inclusive future. I wish to acknowledge with sincere thanks the support and services provided by the Secretariat, notably UNDESA, and all of the interpreters, card service providers, and sign language interpreters, among many others who have worked tirelessly to deliver this successful meeting. Thank you all for your work and contributions. I would also like to remind all speakers to consider sending their statements to e-statements@un.org for posting in the UN Journal no later than 2 hours after delivery if you wish to do so. We will next convene at 3 p.m. with the general debate and roundtable 2. With this, roundtable 1 is now formally concluded, and I declare the meeting closed. I wish you all a good afternoon.